This is Daniel Kinahan, King of Spin, a 4-part Crime World special. Part 3, All-Out Propaganda War. Now, at the end of Part 2, we were discussing all that was going on in Ireland as regards the feud and how the Gardaí were really starting to dismantle the Kinahans' organisation here. While, in the meantime, Daniel Kinahan was continuing with this propaganda campaign, and a lot of the boxers were coming forward with positive things for him positive things about him. MTK continues to expand and expand and expand. And, you know, it's fascinating now looking back on these kind of things that happened, because at the tail end of 2018, it was announced that a guy called Bob Yalen was to be the new president of MTK Global. Now, he was sort of a boxing megastar and a member of the US Hall of Fame. He was obviously an American coming to the table, because all the time you can see MTK sort of moving into the US market, while also developing the market around the United Arab Emirates. But Yalen is one of the biggest names in boxing.
Yeah, and they're starting to sign up big American fighters like Daniel Crawford, who is probably one of the prime up-and-coming boxers in the world. And yeah, Bob Yalen is giving them this air of respectability, I suppose, because he's such an established figure. And in an interview on the Leave It to the Ring podcast, which is one of the biggest boxing podcasts going, he speaks in glowing terms about Daniel Kinahan, because while Daniel Kinahan is kind of a sideshow and some of his reputation has seeped over, and he says, in fairness to Daniel, I've met few people who have a fighter's interest at heart more than Daniel. He may admit that he may not have gone about certain things in the right way, but there was never anything malicious. When I speak to him, he is all about what is best for the fighters and what can be done for the fighter. I can't fault him for that. And he goes on to say that the Irish media have made a big deal about a few incidents.
Now, the other big announcement he makes on that podcast, Leave It in the Ring, is that this lucrative new deal has been made with the Walt Disney Company, ESPN. This is the absolute pinnacle of MTK. MTK is really, really becoming something that is a sort of it's going to be a world powerhouse for boxing. But they're sort of about to enjoy this spectacular launch in the US. And Kinahan in the background is still concentrated on all that went on in Dublin in the Regency Hotel. And it's around this time, towards the end of 2018, that this bizarre kind of a book is produced, and it's available for free on the internet.
Yes, it was a very strange development, Nicola, indeed. Blood Feud is what it was called. And it was first tweeted anonymously. Yeah. But then a lot of boxers started tweeting it. And it made for some very interesting reading. One of the key cartel associates, Johnny Morrissey, was actually one of the first people to tweet it. Yeah. But it basically painted Daniel Kinahan in this kind of very good light. And it had loads of conspiracy theories, basically suggesting things like the media and the government, and everyone was in cahoots with the Hutch gang. I have an actual extract of it here. I'll give a read out of it. It give a bit of a flavour of it. It's a direct quote from the Blood Feud book, if you like. It states, the Hutch gang made a deal with a handful of corrupt senior police officers. They agreed to stage their attack against the Kinahan gang to look like a Republican terrorist attack. In return, the senior police officer agreed to keep police officers from the Regency Hotel both before and during the attack. And obviously there must have been an agreement to limit the prosecutions after the event. So that's kind of a flavour of the conspiracy theories that were contained throughout the publication.
And it sort of even suggested that the emergency services were in cahoots with the plot.
Yes.
And it was sanctioned by the then Taoiseach Enda Kenny. I mean, to the normal person, it's crazy stuff, absolutely crazy stuff. But somebody had gone to the lengths of, and it was it wasn't a booklet, it was, I don't think it was probably 80,000 words, but it was damn near it, well written. Somebody had commissioned it and somebody had published it for free and anonymously.
It It was 157 pages, I think, total. So you're talking about at least half of a regular book. And it was clearly written by somebody with some degree of journalistic experience or professional writing.
No doubt.
I mean, it wasn't like the whistleblower account that we've spoken about. And it was it obviously had inside information, because it did have some details that, while many of them might be in dispute, it had some facts in it that other people wouldn't have known. And the conspiracy theory, I mean, even in that bit you read out, Ken, it doesn't stand up, obviously, because prosecutions did flow and may yet continue to flow from the Regency. This idea that the state agreed not to prosecute anybody simply
didn't happen.
No. I mean, and really at the core of it was that Enda Kenny allowed this to go ahead in order to drag Sinn Féin into to drag Sinn Féin into the Regency House attack media storm, because they were about to win the general election.
And it just shows the importance that Daniel Kinahan put himself in. We spoke in an earlier episode as he's talking to you about the possibility of doing an interview, and he's talking about, how many subscribers you're going to get for anytime he opens his mouth. This sense of self-importance is enormous. I think we can see the ego here is pretty much off the scale.
Off the charts. And it is a fair comment to say that what's in Blood Feud reflects some of what Daniel Kinahan actually said in relation to his thoughts on what happened in the Regency. Crazy as some of it is.
Yeah, for sure. It's his big interview, isn't it? In an anonymously packaged book. Now, what follows from that is early 2019, and maybe he feels he's got his narrative out there, because MTK ends this year-long ban on the global, their boxers speaking to the Irish media, and they had also said they weren't signing up any more Irish boxers. And they state, "We are a truly global company, but Irish boxing will always remain close to the heart of MTK. It would be nice to be free to operate there as we do in every other country in the world. And my hope is that the Irish press will support our efforts to do so." Now, the company is at this point pushing into Kazakhstan, South Africa, China and India, where the fights could be filmed and sent back to pay-per-view format, which is going to make them a huge amount of money. But at the same time, the ambition in Ireland hasn't been left behind, because they are hoping that they will be able to pitch Chantel Cameron, who's also been taken out of the Barry McGuigan stable, against Katie Taylor. And there's kind of agitation about a kind of, will they fight, and et cetera, et cetera. So in July 2019, MTK and Top Rank announced this boxing extravaganza in Nur Sultan, the capital of Kazakhstan. And Bob Arum says about it, "The future of boxing is global. It's a sport understood by people around the world. We're pleased to be working with MTK Global in our mutual effort to globalise the sport on a major basis." But back home in Ireland, there is still problems for them. It's not being ignored what's happened. And I think the former Assistant Commissioner John O'Driscoll, Ken, gives an interview around this possible Cameron Taylor bout.
He does, and it's one of the late John O'Driscoll. It's one of many public, comments that he made over the years. He was probably the lead investigator. Well, he was the lead investigator into the cartel at this stage, but He's kind of using words like in his interview about it's particularly regrettable that organised crime, and he used the word, has hijacked boxing. And to quote what he actually said, he says, organised crime groups have caused huge damage in their own communities, and they've destroyed lives within their own neighbourhoods by supplying drugs. But it's particularly regrettable that they are also suspected of causing significant damage to a sport associated with working class areas too.
Yeah. And of course, he cites Kelly Harrington as a reminder of everything the sport of boxing should be about.
He does, and then he goes on to speak about something we've touched on before, about their interventions basically to save lives. And he points out at that point, and he was talking about the feud, it wasn't just that particular year. At that stage of 2018, they had the Garda National Drugs and Organised Crime Bureau had done 63 of these interventions to save lives. So
Now, the next thing that happens with MTK, Niall, is this golden contract. So sort of explain that if you can. It's September 2019.
Yeah, so this is when MTK really are hitting their biggest deals, and we know bits about these deals actually subsequently, because some of the information has been featured in other court cases. But basically they announced this golden contract tournament to be shown on Sky Sports in association with Eddie Hearn's Matchroom Boxing. Now Daniel had some relationship with Eddie Hearn, who's effectively the biggest boxing promoter in the UK as well, and they seem to have had a good relationship, and MTK are now effectively in with the biggest people on both sides of the Atlantic, and Sky and ESPN are agreeing to work with them. Although they will subsequently say they never had any dealings with Daniel Kinahan, but we do know from people within Top Rank that Top Rank were in regular contact with Daniel Kinahan, who was making decisions on behalf of MTK Global.
So let's just take a moment and see where we're at with the sort of the investigation, the criminal investigation into the cartel side of things, into Kinahan's men, both here and in the UK. Where are we at this point?
So I suppose at this point we're going into 2019, and there's a lot of active investigations going on. This is, I think it's January of this year, over in the UK, very significant arrest. Thomas Bomber Kavanagh, who was basically the head of the UK side of business for the cartel. He would later ultimately be jailed for 22 years. In terms of the feud in terms of murders on the street with so many people locked up, the actual life-saving interventions, the figure was actually was significantly down on previous years. And then we had some crazy developments as well, I suppose, and tragic as well. We had the trial of Patrick Hutch for the Regency Hotel murder of David Byrne, and in tragic and kind of unprecedented circumstances, that trial collapsed after the very sad death of the lead investigator in the case, Colin Fox. And there was also, I suppose, tension was still on the streets. There was a Tyson Fury event that was meant to happen in the Helix in North Dublin. It had to be postponed. I think that was in February. And it was also a similar event that was due to happen in Cork. Sinister kind of graffiti, anti-Kinahan graffiti went up. So it was never stated why it was postponed, but you would have to think it was for safety reasons. So all these, that's just a flavour of some of the things that were happening in space.
So MTK were sort of trying to filter in with maybe not calling themselves MTK, but their own boxers holding events, and there had been another thing planned in City West that had to be cancelled.
Yes,
because their boxers were hoping to fight. His propaganda war, nonetheless, continues, and April 2020, this rapper Jay Spades launches Major Plans.
Good tune, actually.
In February 2016, a gang of five burst into the Regency Hotel in North Dublin during a boxing weigh-in. The three men were disguised as members of the Emergency Response Unit. One was wearing a flat cap and the other dressed as a woman. They entered the venue and opened fire. Their target was the international crime cartel boss, Daniel Kinahan.
Imagine a lifestyle where the feds want to kill you. Guns coming after you, that's government issue. Today you're legit and your business official, but back then you went through some shit like tissue. Big moves, big money coming in, front door. Might be the feds running in Ireland. In the streets, stayed hustling in Dublin, making sure that your money doubling. Gangland, talking Hutch versus Kinahan. You play the game. So
now, that song that we've just listened to there, an extract of, it was announced by tweets tagging journalists, and particularly again from Billy Joe Saunders, who comes into this story a lot as a propagandist for Daniel Kinahan, as a right-hand man for Tyson Fury, and in his own right, I think he's a pretty successful boxer, but he seems to have an awful lot of time to be on social media and to be trying to speak with, or certainly connect with, journalists, and to alert them in case anybody had missed that rapper Jay Spades' Major Plan song, that, just to tell them, hey, this is here. Again, we see a large number of anonymous Twitter accounts from Scotland retweeting that song as they try to get it out there. And Saunders himself writes about the song, "An attack on boxing is an attack on all of us. 4 years since a man was killed and 2 others seriously injured at a boxing event in front of children. The police, government and media have a lot to answer for." Sounds like a similar narrative than what we had in a much lengthier form in Blood Feud. And really the words of the song by Jay Spades tells us the same thing again.
Yeah, and it actually steps up the propaganda, actually, because in Blood Feud, it sort of doesn't deny that Daniel Kinahan is a bit mixed up in crime. It sort of accepts that there is such a thing as the Kinahans involved in drug dealing. But as the propaganda steps up, Daniel becomes a totally and utterly innocent man who just wants to promote a bit of boxing and is being picked on. But it's the same conspiracy, this idea that all of these people got involved, including the government, to pick on poor wee Daniel, I suppose.
Now you can really see how this is picking up, because a month later there's a photograph of Darren Till, who's the first MMA fighter signed to MTK, and he's photographed with Daniel Kinahan in Dubai. Kind of some sort of obviously it's not a selfie, somebody's held a camera taking a picture of them. They have the Dubai skyline in the background. But I think the significance of it is this is the first time we have seen a picture of Daniel Kinahan, A, in Dubai, and B, since he was photographed at the funeral of David Byrne.
Yes, and God, that's almost 4 years of a gap. And it also, I suppose, it also showed how much this business was expanding now. Yeah. That he's photographed with somebody from another discipline and high profile within that area as well.
So does it sort of show us that, again, that is put out there, and of course the media will all run stories around it, certainly in Ireland in particular. Here's the first photograph of Daniel Kinahan since the Regency 2016. Is he sort of shooting himself in the foot there, because he's doing exactly what he would later tell you he didn't want to do, which is hand over anything of himself to the media that would help them sell? Or
I mean, look, we do know that there is a PR agencies involved at this point in Dubai, that he has hired people that have that have expertise in that area. This is definitely put out because they start appearing all the time. And with each one, you don't just get the picture, you get a couple of lines, for example. And he gets lots of feedback with this. And this includes Danny Vaughan, who's one of the premier trainers of MTK and obviously married to Sandra Vaughan, who's running the company in name. He says about Daniel, he has changed the lives of many boxers and trainers with his advice and his vast boxing knowledge. I hope he continues for a long time.
And the next thing that happens is Jay Spades does an interview with IFL TV, and he discusses Kinahan and the injustices of the Regency attack. I do recall watching this and wondering what a guy, he's from London, yeah?
Was he Birmingham or London? But anyway,
had any interest in the intricacies of what was going on in Dublin's, North Inner City, etc. It was a bizarre thing. Nonetheless, the man had written a song and performed it. I'm sure that takes quite a while. Now, we're going to move back to you, Ken, here, because we mentioned this in our first episode about this High Court case that you had actually written about. So lawyers for Sandra and Danny Vaughan and MTK secure a High Court order in London stating that the operator of the whistleblower account, which we've discussed is some sort of a Hutch-linked anonymous account, which is attacking Kinahan all the time, calling him an agent, calling him an informer, etc., and giving up some of the secrets of some of his past life, that account could be jail fined or have their assets seized if they continue. Now, the Vaughans and MTK see this as a win, but in actual fact, nobody defended that. No one from the whistleblower account showed up. So essentially they went to the High Court with money to do this, and it was an uncontested libel action. If no one from the whistleblower was obviously going to show up, because then they would have detailed who they were. So they basically went into court and got this order, and the High Court judge Nicole Bollard ruled that a person unknown should stop publishing, in quotes, words that could be considered to mean that the claimants are A, connected with organised crime, acting as a front for illegal drug smuggling operation, or B, support, sponsor and associate knowingly with murderers, drug dealers, organised crime, criminals. So this is the case that you're speaking about. with Daniel Kinahan, why he actually comes on the phone to you, because he likes the way you report on this.
Yeah, well, I suppose it was just a matter of we reported it kind of straight. And some of my colleagues, I suppose, took a different, and they're well entitled to, of course, they were just a different slant on it. And we just played it straight. We stated what the judge said. We didn't really add anything or take anything from it. And yeah, a few months later, as it transpired, Daniel Kinahan was very happy with that article. He actually, in that conversation, he was describing it as fair. He said that a number of times, actually. So
yeah.
I do think that the way we had covered that court case directly was kind of directly led to him being prepared to talk on the phone to me on that day.
It's interesting though, isn't it? For all his I don't care what people write about me. I mean, at this moment he's signing these multi-million-dollar deals with boxers. His associates in the criminal world are getting done, but he's still quite focused on the whistleblower Twitter account who can't spell to save his life. It is an interesting bit of his psychological profile, isn't it?
Yeah. The whistleblower, of course, replies to this news story about this High Court case. Good stuff.
And the whistleblower continued.
And the whistleblower continues, yes. Yeah. So in May of 2020, the third prong of this, I suppose the book has cost money, the rap has certainly, if Jay Spades was actually paid to do it, or if he did it independently, we don't know. But these things cost a lot of money, especially production. But 2020, the Regency Hotel film was released on YouTube. Now, the production values in it are really high. Yep. And this is the sort of the film of the conspiracy.
Yeah, it's what they call a docudrama. So they're not just putting together old footage, stitching it together and having somebody read over it. They're actually hire actors. They film in Dublin. They have extras. They have a lead, a guy playing Daniel Kinahan. So you're talking, we can only guess, but you're tens of thousands of euros. There's no doubt it would cost to make something like that. It's a 15-minute long. It's shot on locations. Daniel, there's a particularly handsome version of Daniel, isn't there, in it as well?
The actor's particularly handsome, yeah.
Yeah, you can see that, it's so ultimately it's posted anonymously from the UK, but it's hosted by a company called Scarcity Studios, and RTE later would track them down, that they're based in Birmingham in the UK, and post crime and music commentaries on various social media channels. And RTE tell that it was made by an independent production company, but a Scarcity spokesman says that they were contacted out of the blue and asked to post the material on condition of anonymity. And it also says that it was not paid, but that it wanted to publish it so people could make up their own mind. So basically...
And I think people made up their own minds that this was another form of propaganda coming from the Kinahan stable.
Yeah, again, it follows the same conspiracy, but, and it focuses on, some of the interesting bits of it is, Daniel Kinahan is shown to be really worried about the families of the boxers as he comes in, and he's really concerned that they're going to be killed, and,
no police protection in Dublin.
No police protection. And it actually, if you look at it from Blood Feud to the rap to this, Daniel gets more and more noble as the propaganda goes on.
As a complete aside, why does Daniel Kinahan always feel he should have police protection? Way back when Jamie Moore was shot outside his home in Estepona, Marbella, he actually got a lawyer to call for him to have police Guardia Civil protection around his house. It's a kind of a strange juxtaposition for somebody who feels they're in danger because...
Yeah.
Clearly, because they're involved in high-level organised crime, but that the Gardaí or the police in whatever country should surround them in a protective role.
Yeah, I don't know.
Very odd.
It is. Yeah. Now, around this time, Bob Yalen is interviewed on IFL TV, and this is upping the ante even further. And you can see the confidence that's happening in the background with Kinahan about his role. And he speaks about Kinahan. And he actually says that he's actively working on getting Tyson Fury and Anthony Joshua in the ring together. And he adds, our relationship with MTK has been tremendous, and particularly with Dan. who was the original founder of MTK and now is still an advisor to them and in effect our advisor regarding the Middle East. Everyone trusts Kinahan with handling situations. So Dan is like the captain when it comes to the practicalities of doing a fight in the Middle East. Kinahan is one of my favourite guys because I like to deal with guys, no-nonsense people, whose word is their bond. And that's what it's been with Dan. I think Dan's influence is tremendous because people trust him. Now, you could wonder at that point, Bob Arum is he in his 90s at this point?
He's probably in his late 80s.
Certainly his late 80s. Yeah. You know, you wonder, is this sanctioned or not? But I think everything that happens as regards Kinahan's name coming into the arena, the public arena, is sanctioned because you can see what happens next. So Bob Arum has made those comments at a time when Sandra Vaughan has not only denied that there is absolutely any connections whatsoever to Daniel Kinahan, but there have been legal letters sent out to the media. There has been a ban on the Irish media because they persistently say that Kinahan is still involved in the background and as a founder. Bob Arum is saying this publicly. So it's a complete flip. But this is a Trumpian type thing, isn't it? That's happening here. And of course, very shortly afterwards, Kinahan himself in May 2020 is named as the new advisor to a sports company backed by Bahrain's royal family. The company is called KHK Sports. It was founded in 2015 by Sheikh Khalid bin Hamad Al Khalifa, who's the fifth son of the ruler. And the company describes Kinahan as the international boxing power broker. Now, this is going to be a short-lived position for him.
Yeah. Because, of course, it does cause controversy. Because it does and there's bad timing for him in one way because it comes in the same week the Special Criminal Court named the Kinahan organised crime group as a murderous gang that directed the planned assassination of Patsy Hutch. So the names are starting to come out in Irish court appearances. Obviously, they were mentioned in the CAB files. That was the first time they were named in a criminal trial.
I actually think what happened in Bahrain was so he's the fifth son of the ruler. Yeah. I think somebody above him Googled Daniel Kinahan and went, what the hell is happening here? And he was sacked quicker than he actually, he was 5 days in place in that job.
Days, and you see what's happening as well is there's a certain degree of greed from the boxing world because they're struggling to make money in the pay-per-view in the US and they see this gold mine over in the Middle East and Kinahan is acting as a broker between those two worlds and they're, top rank as much as anybody. They're looking to put on those fights and start making some of that petrodollar money, get that flowing back into them.
Now, the next thing, Ken, that happens is Sandra Vaughan, as I mentioned there, like Bob Arum has come out with these comments that completely contradict what she has said and her actions, and even going to the High Court in London. But she comes out and gives an interview again to IFL TV, which seems to be a constant here. And she sort of goes back on what she's previously said.
Yeah, well, look, to put it lightly, she very much stands up for Daniel. And to quote her, in that interview, she said that I've known him for 20 years. I'm personal friends with his wife. I know the kids and they are a credit to him. He is an astute businessman. I will go to him for advice on anything and have done so, not just about MTK, but also about other business interests I have had. Even though he's a lot younger, he's a lot wiser than me. Whether the Irish media like it or not, he is now one of the most powerful men in boxing and combat sport. They really need to suck it up. At some point, would you not be proud that someone from inner city Dublin is sitting at a table with that level of the organisation? He's making history, making fights. That is a fact. So look, that's
isn't it?
Pretty robust defence. And I suppose as Niall was saying there, this is the time that the Kinahan cartel were first named in a criminal court case. And you're saying there, he didn't last so long in that job. The pressure, even, this is a very robust defence from, someone who is very well known and respected in the boxing industry. But the pressure was starting to mount on Daniel at this particular point.
I think his confidence was also mounting though too, because what he's actually doing is he's coming out of the shadows. Bit by bit, he's going to come out and stand there. He wants to take ownership of what he's done. He's working in the background of Tyson Fury. He's done these deals with the Americans, with Bob Arum, with Walt Disney, with Sky, with all these big, huge, major media companies. He has made MTK one of the most important companies in the world of boxing on both sides of the Atlantic, and he wants to own it. But because they have denied any involvement with him, they have to try and do this slowly and in what he believes is a very clever way. Now, Vaughan sort of is contradicting her earlier claims of having no business links to Kinahan, back when she threatened that legal action on anybody who linked her to him. And in the statement to the High Court, she's denied that he had anything to do with MTK. And she has given that statement on oath to the High Court, and yet is sitting now saying, well, he's my advisor. Yeah. She's not quite saying he's still absolutely involved. They're giving a tiny little window.
Yeah, they're kind of saying that he advises the fighters, but he doesn't get involved in the actual, the running of the company. It's
an advisor, and what she goes on, I think, to describe is that he does it for free.
Yes.
He doesn't get paid. It's just out of the kindness of his heart. It's just because he's so interested in boxing. And she confirms that he's the one to sign Tyson Fury to MTK. She says Daniel is an advisor to Bob Arum, and that is the reason MTK managed to get dates for ESPN. He gave me the introduction to Top Rank. He wants MTK to do well. He has stepped away. He is his own person. And she said the Irish media reporting on Daniel Kinahan is a standing joke. They're the butt of Irish jokes. That is why people make jokes about the Irish. They even contradict themselves. It's not journalism. I mean, for a guy that is really sailing, into the absolute pinnacle of where he wants to be in boxing, he's still very concerned. He just cannot let Ireland go. Or the Irish media. Or his reputation here.
I think it is, though, a type of trying to flood the zone, which Trump does, which is where, you just constantly put a lot of stuff out, and because people don't pay a huge amount of attention to it, they this is what the Trumpian, it is a strategy where you deny everything, you confuse matters, you get all sorts of stuff out there, and most people aren't going to investigate heavily, and they just think, there's a few claims about him, but there's no proof. That's all they take out of it, and I think that is the strategy that he has at this stage.
It's one thing Sandra Vaughan saying that he was the guy who fixed the Tyson Fury and was in the background working away trying to fix this new fight for him. But we're just going to have a quick look at a very well watched video selfie that Tyson Fury released.
Hello there. I'm just after getting off the phone with Daniel Kinahan. He's just informed me that the biggest fight in British boxing history has just been agreed. Get up there, my boy! Big shout out, Dan. He got this done. Literally over the line. 2-fight deal. Tyson Fury versus Anthony Joshua next year.
Now, that shout out for Kinahan. What is the significance of this, and how massive a moment is this?
Well, it's looking like it's going to be the biggest fight of all time. I mean, at that stage, Tyson Fury is the biggest superstar in boxing. Anthony Joshua is, the number 2, and it's Daniel Kinahan's name being put in that context, and again being given this sort of praise. At the end of the day, he's just a businessman who's done a deal. They don't normally get that level of praise. For him to be put out like that, it's him really stepping in public into the biggest deal of all time. And there is a huge reaction to it, I think. That June, Leo Varadkar, who's then the Taoiseach, speaks in the Dáil and says Kinahan's links to Tyson Fury, and says Ireland is making representations to the UAE in relation to the Kinahan organised crime group. So that's probably the first reaction, I think, certainly from a politician of that who's so senior about these ties.
I think he was the Taoiseach at the time.
He was.
And in the course of the conversation, it was very clear that particular comment by Leo Varadkar in the Dáil is something that really, really pissed off Daniel Kinahan.
That's why he called him out.
Yeah, and to the point of claiming corruption and so on. It was, look, I suppose in hindsight, that being said, in the Parliament, in the Dáil, ultimately that's something that's hugely damaging. And he indicated then that at government level there was going to be contacts between our government and governments in the Middle East in relation to this
Kinahan,
whole boxing scenario that had broken out.
It gives it an authority for it to be said in the National Parliament. It also, of course, is protected from any libel action or defamation action because you have privilege in the Dáil.
Parliamentary privilege.
And it's automatically, it is being picked up then at this point. And, it's starting to go around the world, that tie to crime.
Now, it's the boxers who, again, show that boxing is carrying on regardless, and they come out to support Kinahan. Marvin Herbert, who is an interesting character, who actually shows up in the earliest times in MGM in Marbella. He's boxing and he's working as a coach. He has an interesting history. But he does an interview on the James English podcast, and this is what he has to say.
Like I said, without Daniel, I wouldn't be walking. I wouldn't be here. Like when I wanted to get my leg chopped off, I was sitting down with Daniel and I was in so much pain. I was suffering so much. I just wanted to get his leg chopped off. And I said, I'm going to have it chopped off. And he said, don't, mate.
So Kinahan persuaded him not to chop off his leg. Another miracle that Kinahan has sort of done. It's like he's touching the healing hands on these people and he's helping them with their mental health and everything else. Yeah. And you can see they really believe that and that, a lot of these boxers really believe that Kinahan is a kind of godlike creature to them almost.
But it is a bit over the top always, isn't it? Some of the praise, like it's not... just regular sort of praise. He's almost superhuman.
He is. Now, in June of 2020, Bob Arum goes on News Talk and he backs Kinahan again, describing him as a key, reliable negotiator for Tyson Fury's fights, who was dead honest and forthright. Arum is coming from a completely different part of the world. I don't think he's any idea of the significance of what's happening in Ireland, about how, he doesn't really care about Ireland, I suppose, either. But, he's going on radio here, News Talk. We can only presume that Arum is doing that of his own free will.
I think so. I think he's very...
He's a bit eccentric.
He's eccentric and he's been dealing with the media for decades. I mean, he was Muhammad Ali's manager at one stage. He was going back that far. And I think... he's definitely not reading into in detail, and all he's really hearing is there's some people saying some stuff about him, but there's loads of other people saying how great he is. But he just obviously likes the sound of it.
And also there has been, crime and boxing has been associated for years. And I mean, people say that about them, but actually, that's his idea.
And he would later say he knew there was some allegations about Daniel, but he thought that was all in the long distant past. And I think what the difference with Kinahan is, it's not in the past, it's ongoing.
And the reason I think that Arum is doing this of his own volition, I don't think he's been encouraged to. Maybe he's been encouraged to do it, but he's certainly making up his own mind. Yeah. He's not being ordered to do it. It's after the UK media starts to focus on Kinahan's criminality, which starts to happen around now. Arum pulls back a bit. Now, later in an interview with the Daily Telegraph, he says, over the weekend, I've had a lot of conversations with Tyson, and what we both decided is that myself, Top Rank and Tyson will do all the negotiations for fights in the future. No sign of Kinahan in this. Both Tyson and I have discussed this with Dan, and he's amenable and satisfied and wished us luck. He only wants the best for Tyson Fury. So it's like one step in and one step out again.
Yeah.
So he's obviously dipped in. He has been, in what he sees, savaged in the Dáil by Leo Varadkar, which he sees as being a very significant thing to happen to him, despite the fact that he's so dismissive of Ireland, its strength on the world stage and its importance in his life. He's obviously been sort of bit. So he's pulling back a little bit again. And they go out and they make this statement that actually Dan is just moving into the background.
And we do know, or we subsequently hear from other court cases, that ESPN are getting a bit wobbly about the bad publicity in particular, that they don't really want to be associated with.
Sky Sports are getting loads of press queries as well, and I'm sure it's not comfortable to a big company like that to be anyway associated with somebody like Daniel Kinahan. Now, in June 2020, Yalen is appointed CEO of MTK and Sandra Vaughan steps down. Yalen says in one of his first interviews that Kinahan is stepping away again. So they try to reinvent the wheel here.
Yeah.
And you wonder why, because in August 2020 they signed their first American-born fighter. And they go on to announce a dozen more. They open a gym in Miami and they launch a base in Canada. The problem for them is this bad publicity. They could suffer it if it's just here, but the Americans will not. And they're trying to move into America. They're trying to expand into America. And obviously you have all the RICO laws and all the other problems that there may be there.
Yeah, and of course they don't know at this stage that the DEA have a huge interest in them and a growing interest. That isn't really public knowledge yet. In particular, the fact that the DEA were monitoring Kinahan's wedding isn't known at this point. But so the American officials are aware of them, and the move into there is going to be hugely controversial.
And in the background, Ken, of course, Panorama is getting ready to broadcast their explosive documentary, and you're agitating for a statement. You have been listening to Daniel Kinahan, King of Spin, a Crime World 4-part series. Our thanks to Ken Foy. Produced by Ian Malini, assistant producers Chloe McPolan and Nasa Comiskey. Written by Jenny Friel, written and edited by me, Nicola Tallant.